Should you start Luis Severino or Lance Lynn next week? Find out next on Fantasy Baseball Today in 5. Welcome into FBT in 5 on Friday, June 9th. I am Frank Sanford, joined by Scott White, and let's get into our Week 12 preview, starting with the schedule. 3 teams have 5 games next week: the Brewers, Yankees, and Mets. 18 teams have 6 games, and 9 teams have 7 games next week. Starters sit these fringe 2-start pitchers. Luis Severino did not look good once again on Thursday. What do we do, Scott? At the Mets and at the Boston Red Sox.
So it's kind of a bad week for streamable 2-star pitchers. I do 2-star pitcher rankings every week. The top 13 I all have in the must-start tier, which is about twice as many as usual. So that leaves few others that we can debate about. So I'm being a little more gracious, I guess, with my selections because people need players to choose from. So I do have Luis Severino as somebody who's advisable in most leagues, even though the matchups aren't great and he's gotten hit hard his past couple starts, maybe leaning on the cutter too much at the expense of his slider. But I lean yes on Severino.
In that same vein, Lance Lynn just got rocked again by not so impressive Yankees lineup. He is at the Dodgers and at the Mariners.
So I would have no objections to anybody sitting him in any format. But again, because it's hard to find, there are so many people who like to stretch for that extra start. And because there's so few who are even sort of advisable beyond the must starts, I have Lance Lynn as somebody you could consider using in a head-to-head league specifically. Wouldn't want to rest the ERA whip damage in a categories league, but in a points league, maybe roll the dice on him. Again, just 2 starts ago, we were thinking he was pretty much back on track.
So which 2-start pitchers might be available to add and stream for next week, Scott? I see you got 4 names written down here.
Yeah, which again is less than usual. And the only one I feel great about is James Paxton. It's amazing to me. He just barely qualifies, 79% rostered, but it's amazing he's even that available, given how well he's pitched since coming back from the IL. His 2 matchups against the Rockies and against the Yankees, who are missing Aaron Judge. So he's a definite 2-star pitcher. Start him in every league. Reese Olson is only 7% rostered. Tigers rookie. He's only made 2 appearances, 5 innings. I say appearances because he actually followed an opener in the second one. But he's looked great. And he looked great in his last 2 minor league starts. Dominant, has a slider that gets 3,000 RPM. Matchups could be better. He's facing the Braves, hosting the Braves, and then at Minnesota. But, I mean, he's highly available. Reese Olson. Dane Dunning is facing the Angels and the Blue Jays. So, again, the matchups could be better. Dean Kramer against the Blue Jays and at the Cubs. He's just kind of, he's kind of shaky overall, but he's probably the 4th choice among those you could reasonably add off the waiver wire. I do like some 1-start options who you could maybe pick up instead. Bailey Ober against the Brewers, Logan Allen at the Padres, Louis Varland against the Tigers, Patrick Sandoval at the Royals. And provided his first major league start Friday goes well, by the time you're listening to it may have already happened, AJ Smith-Shawver, Braves rookie at the Tigers. Worst offense in baseball. If he looks halfway decent Friday, then I think he's advisable. More advisable than Reese Olson with the 2 starts, in fact.
Let's slide over to the hitters for next week and the best hitter matchups: the Braves, Phillies, Rays, Royals, and Twins. The worst hitter matchups: Yankees, Nationals, Brewers, Padres, and the Guardians. With that being said, Scott, your favorite sleeper hitters in Week 12.
So you mentioned the Braves have the best matchups. They also have a few hitters who are hot and highly available: Marcell Ozuna, Eddie Rosario, Orlando Arcia, whose numbers just continue to go up. I wouldn't recommend Eddie Rosario if there were too many lefties on the schedule, but there are only 2 in the 7 games. So with the way he's been performing lately, he should start at least 5 of the games coming up with the good matchups. The Reds, you didn't mention them as being among the teams with the 5 best, but they also have very favorable matchup. Begin the week with a series against the Royals pitching staff. So Matt McClain, I would say, is a must. Jake Fraley, who's been on fire for about a month now, sits against lefties, but the Reds only have one of those on the schedule. I like those 2 Reds. Brian Hayes has been hot, and the Pirates matchups are pretty favorable. You mentioned the Twins with the 5th best matchup, so I think Royce Lewis is a good choice, as well as Willie Castro, who is in particular thrives against lefties, and Twins are facing 3 this week. Adam Duvall's set to return from the IL over the weekend. I think the matchups are good enough. You could get him right back in the lineup. And a real sneaky play here, Nick Pratto of the Royals, who I expect his numbers to regress, but their matchups this week, 4th best. Maybe not, especially since they're facing 3 lefties. And even though Pratto's a left-handed hitter himself, his numbers against lefties this year have been phenomenal. Might as well enjoy it while it lasts, right?
Yeah, let's do it with Nick Pratto. For more extensive fantasy baseball coverage, listen to the Fantasy Baseball Today podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, the Audacy app, or anywhere else podcasts are found. Thanks for listening to Fantasy Baseball Today in 5, and we'll be back again tomorrow. Bye-bye.